The sun was just beginning to set over the small town highway. The gas station near the corner of the road was quiet, with only a few cars parked by the pumps. Birds sat on the wires, and the sound of the wind carried across the open space. Inside the station, a man named Ravi walked out with a bottle of water in his hand. His steps were steady, his posture straight, and his eyes calm. His clothes were simple, but anyone who looked closely could see something different about him. The way he carried himself showed discipline. His hair was cut short, his boots were clean though old, and his movements had the quiet sharpness of someone trained. Ravi was a veteran. He had served his country for many years, though he never spoke much about it. He lived a simple life now, traveling from place to place, keeping his distance from noise and trouble. For him, this gas station stop was just another short break before he continued his drive. As he placed the bottle of water in his car, a police vehicle rolled into the station. The sound of its siren was off, but the red and blue lights flashed once before stopping. A tall man stepped out of the car. His name was Officer Dean. Dean was known in the town for his proud and heavy manner. He believed his badge gave him power over everyone, and he enjoyed showing it. His uniform was neat, his sunglasses covered his eyes even though the sun was low, and his voice was sharp whenever he spoke. Dean looked around the empty station and then focused on Ravi. He saw a lone man with a strong build and a calm face. Something about Ravi's silence made Dean uncomfortable. He wanted to prove himself, to remind others of his authority. He walked toward Ravi with heavy steps. "Hey you," Dean said loudly. "What are you doing here?" Ravi turned his head slowly, his expression steady. "Just getting water," he answered in a low, calm voice. Dean narrowed his eyes. "You got ID on you?" he asked. His tone was not polite. It was the tone of someone trying to show control. Ravi nodded, reached into his pocket, and handed over his license without a word. His movements were slow and careful, showing no sign of fear. Dean looked at the card, then back at Ravi. He noticed the address was from out of town. "You're not from here," Dean said, trying to sound suspicious. "No," Ravi replied simply. Dean crossed his arms. "So what brings you to this station?" "Passing through?" "Yes," Ravi said. He had no interest in arguing, but Dean didn't like the short answers. He felt as if Ravi was ignoring his authority, and that made his pride sting. "You know," Dean said louder, "we don't like strangers hanging around, especially people who think they don't need to answer questions." Ravi looked at him, still calm. "I answered your questions." The air grew heavy between them. Dean was not used to people standing so steady in front of him. Most people got nervous when he pressed them, but Ravi's quietness made him feel small. Dean stepped closer, trying to look taller. "Listen here," he said firmly. "I ask the questions. You give respect. That's how this works." Ravi's eyes stayed steady. His voice did not rise. Respect is given both ways. For a moment, silence filled the air. The few people at the far side of the station looked over, sensing something was about to happen. Dean clenched his jaw. He wanted to push harder, to show everyone that he was in charge. He thought of making Ravi step aside, maybe even search his car. His pride demanded it. But before Dean could speak again, the quiet road beside the station filled with the deep sound of engines. 4 black SUVs appeared in the distance, moving together in a tight line. Their windows were dark, their presence strong. The cars turned smoothly into the station, their engines rumbling like thunder. Everyone at the station turned to look. The sight of 4 identical black SUVs moving in perfect order was unusual and intimidating. Dean froze for a moment, his confidence shaken. He glanced at Ravi, who stood still, not surprised at all. Ravi's calm face held no fear, as if he had been expecting something. The SUVs stopped in a line near Ravi's car. Doors opened at the same time, and men in dark suits stepped out with sharp movements. They looked serious, professional, and focused. Dean felt his chest tighten. Whoever these people were, they were not ordinary visitors. And the way they looked at Ravi told him that this man was not ordinary either. Ravi quietly closed his bottle of water, placed it on the car roof, and waited. The moment that was about to unfold would change the entire tone of the gas station, and for the first time, Officer Dean began to wonder if he had picked the wrong man to intimidate. The air at the gas station became tense as the 4 black SUVs stood in a row. Their engines went quiet, but the weight of their presence stayed heavy. Everyone nearby stopped what they were doing. A man filling his car forgot to put the nozzle back. The cashier behind the glass window pressed closer to the glass, trying to see clearly. Officer Dean adjusted his belt and took a step back. His sunglasses no longer made him feel powerful. The men stepping out of the SUVs moved with exact timing, as if they had practiced it many times. They were dressed in sharp suits, each wearing an earpiece, and their eyes scanned the area with alertness. Dean's mind raced. Who were they? And why did they come here right when he was questioning this man? The suited men ignored everyone else and walked straight toward Ravi. Their steps were firm but respectful. One of them, taller than the rest, gave a small nod to Ravi as if greeting someone important. "Sir," the tall man said in a clear voice. Ravi returned a short nod, his face calm, as always. He did not look surprised, nor did he look worried. Dean blinked in confusion. He had been trying to intimidate Ravi only moments ago, but now these serious men were treating Ravi like someone above them. The tall man glanced at Dean for a second, then back at Ravi. "Everything is ready, sir. We will follow your lead." Dean's throat felt dry. He stepped forward quickly, trying to regain control of the situation. "Hold on," he said, raising his hand. "Who are you people? This is a police matter." The men in suits didn't react to his sharp tone. They stood still, watching Dean the way one might watch a barking dog without real concern. The tall man turned his head slowly toward Dean. His eyes were calm but firm. "This is not your concern, officer," he said evenly. His voice was not loud, but it carried weight. Dean bristled. "Not my concern? This is my town. I have authority here." He pointed at Ravi. This man was acting suspicious. "I was questioning him." The tall man tilted his head slightly as if the words meant nothing. Then he turned back to Ravi. "Sir, do you want us to handle this?" Ravi shook his head. His voice remained calm. "No, I will speak to him." Dean clenched his fists. He felt the eyes of the bystanders on him. He could not back down now. His pride was burning. He turned to Ravi. "Who are you? Why are these people here for you?" Ravi looked at him steadily. "I am just passing through," he said simply. "That is all you need to know." Dean's jaw tightened. "No, I need more than that. If you think you can just walk into my town and bring a parade with you, you're wrong. I want answers." The tall man took one step closer. Though he did not raise his voice, his presence made Dean instinctively step back. "You should choose your words carefully, officer," he said. "The man you are speaking to has done more for this country than you can imagine. Show respect." The crowd at the gas station whispered among themselves. Some began to realize that Ravi was not an ordinary traveler. Dean's face grew red. "Respect?" he snapped. "Respect is earned, and right now I see a man trying to hide something." Ravi sighed softly. He could see Dean's pride was blinding him. He spoke in a calm tone, but his words carried strength. "I served in places you cannot name," Ravi said. "I stood in front of danger so people like you could wear that badge safely. I do not seek recognition, but I will not be disrespected." The words hit Dean harder than he expected. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. He felt the weight of Ravi's calm voice, and for a moment, he saw something in his eyes: discipline, sacrifice, and a kind of strength that could not be measured by a uniform. Before Dean could respond, another man stepped out of the second SUV. He carried a small case in his hand. He walked to Ravi, opened the case, and revealed documents with official seals. "Sir, the files you requested," the man said respectfully. Ravi took the case and closed it. Then he looked at Dean one last time. "Officer, sometimes power is not in the badge or the uniform. It is in actions, in what one gives for others." Dean stood frozen, unsure what to do. His pride battled with the unease crawling inside him. For the first time, he began to sense that he had misjudged the quiet man at the gas station. And as the sun dipped lower behind the hills, the 4 black SUVs stood ready, waiting for Ravi's next move. The station grew quiet after Ravi's words. Even the wind seemed to pause, as if listening. Officer Dean's chest rose and fell quickly, but he stayed silent. The crowd of bystanders whispered softly, their eyes moving between Ravi and the men in black suits. Dean's mind raced. He had spent years walking into situations where people bent under his authority. But this moment was different. He felt out of place, standing before someone who carried himself like he had nothing to prove. The tall man in the suit spoke again, his voice steady. Sir, we should leave soon. We don't want to draw more attention here. Ravi nodded slowly, but his eyes stayed on Dean. He had no wish to embarrass the officer, but he also could not allow arrogance to go unchallenged. Dean finally found his voice. You think you can just walk away? Not in my town. I still need to know who you are and what's in that case. His words came out sharp, but inside he was less certain than ever. Ravi placed the case inside his car without answering. He looked at Dean with calm patience as though weighing his next words. You should learn something, officer, he said at last. Sometimes the most dangerous thing is not what you see, but what you don't see. Do not mistake silence for weakness. The crowd murmured at this, impressed by the quiet strength in his tone. Dean felt heat rise in his face. He could sense the people's attention slipping away from him, moving toward Ravi. For a man who thrived on control, this felt like losing ground. Determined not to be outshone, Dean took a bold step forward. If you think you can stand here and give speeches, you're wrong. I can call for backup. I can make this a problem for you. The tall, suited man stepped closer, his gaze hard as steel. If you do that, officer, you may find the problem will not be his. It will be yours, Dean swallowed hard. The man's tone was not a threat, it was a statement of fact. That made it more frightening. Still, Dean's pride forced him to hold his ground. I don't care who you think you are. Around here, I'm the law. At that, Ravi finally allowed a small smile to cross his face. Not mocking, but knowing. He stepped closer, closing the distance between himself and Dean. Their eyes met, and in that moment, Dean felt the full weight of the man standing before him. You wear the law, Ravi said calmly. I lived it. Every day in uniform, far from home, I carried the lives of others in my hands. When bullets flew, there was no backup call that could save us. Only discipline, courage, and sacrifice. Dean stiffened. For a brief moment, he saw flashes in Ravi's eyes, scenes of battle, hardship, and the kind of loyalty he had never known. He realized this was not just a traveler. This was someone forged by fire, someone who had faced more than Dean could imagine. The bystanders felt it too. An older man near the pump whispered, He's a veteran. Look at the way those men respect him. He's someone important. Dean's lips pressed tightly together. His pride fought with the truth rising inside him. He wanted to hold on to control, but he could not deny the air of authority around Ravi, an authority that came without flashing lights or a badge. One of the suited men stepped forward and placed a hand lightly on Ravi's shoulder. Sir, time is short. The convoy is ready. Ravi gave a single nod. He turned back to Dean one last time. Officer, your badge is meant to protect, not intimidate. Use it wisely. Dean's jaw tensed. He wanted to argue, but the words would not come. He stood frozen, his pride wounded as Ravi walked toward the first SUV. The suited men moved with him, forming a silent shield. Doors opened smoothly, waiting for him. Ravi paused before stepping inside, turning his gaze once more toward Dean. There was no anger in his eyes, only calm strength. Then he entered the vehicle and the doors shut with a solid thud. The engine started again, a deep synchronized sound that filled the station. Slowly, the 4 SUVs rolled forward in perfect formation, leaving behind the quiet gas station and one shaken officer. As the vehicles disappeared down the road, Dean stood motionless, his thoughts heavy. For the first time, he wondered if authority was more than a badge and if respect could only be earned through sacrifice. The crowd slowly returned to their business, but the whispers stayed. They would not forget what they had seen, and Dean knew deep inside neither would he. After the black SUVs disappeared down the long road, the gas station returned to its quiet rhythm. The sound of the wind came back and the hum of the pumps filled the air again. But for Officer Dean, nothing felt normal anymore. He stood near his police car, his hands resting on his belt, his thoughts heavy. The people around him slowly left, still whispering about the man they had just seen. Who was he? Someone said. Those cars looked like government vehicles, another replied. I think that man was someone important, said a third voice. Dean heard every word, and each one felt like a reminder of his mistake. He had walked in proud and confident, trying to show his power, but he had ended up being the one put in his place. He climbed into his car and sat quietly. His reflection stared back at him from the rearview mirror. For the first time, he didn't like what he saw. He remembered Ravi's calm eyes and steady voice, There was something in that man's silence that spoke louder than any words. Dean had worn his badge like a weapon, but Ravi had carried his honor like armor. As Dean sat there, lost in thought, his radio crackled to life. "Officer Dean, report your location," a voice said. He grabbed the radio and answered. "I'm at the highway gas station." "Situation clear, copy that," the voice replied. "We received a call from headquarters. They want you to file a report on a convoy sighting near your location. 4 black SUVs. Did you see them?" Dean froze. The convoy. He had just seen them with his own eyes, but now he wasn't sure what to say. "Yes," he said slowly. "They were here. They left a few minutes ago. Any details?" the voice asked. Dean hesitated. He didn't know who those men were, but he was certain they weren't ordinary. "They looked official," he said carefully. "I think they were escorting someone." There was a short pause on the other end. "Understood. Leave it at that. Headquarters will handle it." The radio went silent again. Dean leaned back in his seat. His curiosity grew stronger. Who was Ravi, really? And why did men like that treat him with such respect? Dean turned the key, starting his car. He couldn't just leave it alone. He needed to know more. Maybe it was pride, or maybe it was the beginning of something else. Something like respect. He drove out of the gas station and followed the direction the SUVs had taken. The road stretched ahead, straight and quiet. The sky was painted orange and gold from the setting sun. For a while there was nothing but open fields and distant hills. Then far ahead he saw a small cloud of dust, tire marks on the road. The SUVs had taken a side route. Dean followed slowly until he reached an old rest stop. It looked abandoned, but there were fresh tracks leading behind it. He parked his car a safe distance away and stepped out. He moved carefully, his eyes scanning the area. He could hear faint voices coming from behind the building. He approached quietly and peeked around the corner. There they were, the same 4 black SUVs. The suited men stood in a loose circle, talking in low voices. Ravi was with them, standing near a large black case on the hood of one vehicle. Dean couldn't hear the words, but he could see the seriousness in their faces. It wasn't about crime or money. It looked like something official, something bigger than a small-town police officer could imagine. One of the men handed Ravi a tablet. Ravi tapped the screen and nodded. His movements were precise and confident, like a man used to giving commands. Dean watched in silence. For the first time, he didn't feel anger or pride. He felt respect and curiosity. Then suddenly Ravi turned his head slightly. His eyes met Dean's from across the distance. Dean froze. He hadn't made a sound, but somehow Ravi knew he was there. The suited men turned their heads too, alert but calm. Dean felt caught, unsure what to do. Ravi raised his hand slightly, signaling for them to stand down. He walked toward Dean with slow, steady steps. When he reached him, he spoke in the same calm tone as before. "You followed us, officer." "Why?" Dean swallowed. "I just wanted to know who you are," he said honestly. "I needed to understand." Ravi looked at him for a long moment. "Understanding comes from respect," he said softly. "You don't need to know everything. Sometimes it's enough to learn from what you see." Dean nodded quietly. He felt no anger now, only humility. Ravi turned back toward the vehicles. "Go back to your town, officer. Keep it safe. That's your duty. Leave the rest to those who serve in silence." Dean lowered his eyes. "Yes, sir." Ravi gave a small nod and walked away. The SUVs started their engines again, moving smoothly down the dirt road until they disappeared into the distance. Dean stood alone, the sound of their engines fading behind him. For the first time in years, he understood that true authority came not from power, but from honor and service. And as the wind blew across the quiet rest stop, Officer Dean felt something new in his heart, respect for a man he had once tried to intimidate. The night had fallen by the time Officer Dean drove back into town. The streets were quiet, and the only sound was the hum of his police car. He had spent the whole drive thinking about the man he met, the calm veteran who had faced him without fear and walked away with quiet dignity. Dean parked his car outside the station and sat there for a long time, staring at the badge on his chest. It still shone under the dim light, but it no longer felt like the same badge. He began to realize that wearing it was not about control. It was about duty, and he had almost forgotten that. Inside the small police building, his partner, Officer Liam, looked up from a desk. "You're late," he said, yawning. Heard there was some trouble at the gas station. Dean nodded and hung his hat on the rack. You could say that, he replied. What happened? Liam asked. Dean paused. He didn't know how to explain it. Just met someone different. Someone who reminded me what this job is really about. Liam frowned, confused. What do you mean? Dean sat down across from him. You ever meet a man who doesn't have to raise his voice to make you listen? Someone who makes you feel small not because he's trying to, but because he's seen more, done more? Liam chuckled. You sound like you just met a legend. Dean gave a small nod. Maybe I did. He didn't mention the SUVs or the men in suits. He knew it was better that way. Whatever Ravi was involved in, it wasn't for public record. It was something deeper, something that belonged to a world beyond the small-town police force. Later that night, when everyone else had gone home, Dean stayed in the office alone. He opened his notebook and wrote down what had happened. Not as a report, but as a reminder for himself. He wrote, Power without respect is empty. Authority without humility is weakness. Then he closed the notebook and stared out the window at the quiet streets. Somewhere out there, Ravi was still moving, doing things that people like Dean might never understand. The next morning, Dean woke early. He felt different, quieter inside. He wore his uniform not with pride this time, but with purpose. When he reached the station, he found Liam talking to a local store owner. The man looked worried. Morning, Dean said. What's going on? The store owner turned to him. Someone broke into my shop last night. Took some tools and cash. Dean nodded and took notes. We'll check the cameras and patrol the area. As he worked through the case, he felt something new in his actions. He was calmer, more focused, and spoke with respect to everyone he met. He no longer used his tone to control people. Instead, he listened carefully. By the afternoon, he and Liam had found a trail of footprints behind the store. They followed it through the alley until it led to an old shed near the edge of town. Inside, they found a young man hiding, scared and shaking. The boy couldn't have been older than 18. Please, the boy said, I didn't mean to. I just needed money for my family. Liam raised his voice. You think that makes it right? You're under arrest. Dean held up a hand. Wait, he looked at the boy carefully. His clothes were torn and his hands were dirty from work. It was clear he wasn't a troublemaker, just desperate. Dean remembered Ravi's words. Respect is given both ways. He spoke softly. Son, stealing isn't the answer. You could have asked for help. This town takes care of its own. The boy looked down. I didn't think anyone would listen. Dean sighed and motioned for him to stand. You'll come with us, but we'll make sure you get a fair chance. No one's beyond help. Liam gave Dean a surprised look but didn't argue. Together, they took the boy back to the station. Later, as Dean filled out the report, he felt something change in him again. He realized that true authority wasn't about fear. It was about understanding. Ravi had shown him that in a single moment, without ever raising his voice. That night, as Dean drove home, he saw a figure standing near the town's edge. A man with a strong posture and calm eyes. Ravi. He stood there quietly beside one of the black SUVs, looking toward the horizon. Dean slowed down his car, unsure whether to stop. But Ravi turned his head slightly and gave him a small nod, as if to say, You're learning. Dean nodded back. Then Ravi climbed into the SUV, and it drove off into the night. Dean smiled faintly. He didn't know where Ravi was going, but he knew one thing for sure. He would never forget the lesson that man had taught him. From that day on, Dean stopped being an arrogant cop. He became something better, a man who truly understood what it meant to serve. Days passed after Dean's quiet meeting with Ravi at the town's edge. The encounter had changed something inside him. He no longer felt the same rush of pride when people looked at his uniform. Instead, he felt a quiet sense of duty. The badge was no longer about showing power. It was about protecting people and earning their trust. Dean started spending more time on patrol in the smaller parts of town, places he had once ignored. He talked to shopkeepers, greeted old people sitting outside their homes, and helped kids cross the busy street. People noticed the change. Officer Dean seems different these days, one man said at the bakery. Yeah, another replied. He actually listens now. Dean heard these small comments sometimes, and though he didn't say anything, he felt a bit of peace. He didn't need to be feared anymore. Respect felt better. One evening, as the sky turned orange, Dean received a call from the dispatcher. Officer Dean, there's a disturbance on the old highway road near Miller's farm. A black vehicle parked there for some time. Locals are reporting unusual activity. Dean's grip tightened on the steering wheel when he heard black vehicle. His mind went back to that day at the gas station and the 4 black SUVs. Could it be connected? He turned on his siren and drove toward the old road. The air grew colder as he neared the place. It was quiet, too quiet. When he reached the spot, he saw a single black SUV parked near a broken fence. Its engine was off and no one seemed to be inside. Dean stepped out carefully, one hand resting on his radio. "This is Officer Dean," he said into it. "I've got a black SUV at the Miller's Farm Road." Checking it out, he approached slowly. The vehicle looked familiar. The same sleek design, same tinted windows. He peered inside but saw nothing. Then a voice came from behind him. "Evening, officer." Dean turned quickly. Ravi stood there, dressed in a plain jacket, calm as always. Dean let out a slow breath. "You again," he said, half smiling. "I thought you were gone." Ravi gave a small nod. "I was. But sometimes the road brings you back." Dean looked at him, unsure whether to feel surprised or relieved. "What are you doing here?" "Finishing something I started," Ravi said simply. He glanced at the SUV. "We're meeting someone soon." Dean frowned. "Someone? Is this official business?" Ravi didn't answer directly. "You don't need to worry. It's nothing that will harm your town, but I didn't expect to see you here." Dean stepped closer, his tone respectful. "After last time, I started thinking a lot. You taught me something that day." Ravi looked at him, his expression calm but curious. "And what did you learn?" Dean smiled faintly. "That respect doesn't come from fear. It comes from how we treat others. I've been trying to do better since then." Ravi's eyes softened slightly. "That's good, officer. The world needs more men who understand that." Just then, the headlights of 2 more vehicles appeared in the distance, approaching fast. Dean tensed, his training kicking in. But Ravi raised a hand calmly. "It's all right. They're with me." 2 black cars stopped beside the SUV. Several people stepped out, dressed in plain clothes, but with the same sharp posture as before. One of them, a woman with a tablet in her hand, walked up to Ravi and gave him a short nod. "Everything is ready, sir," she said. Ravi turned back to Dean. "You should head back now. What happens next isn't for public eyes." Dean looked at him for a long moment. "Are you working for the government?" he asked quietly. Ravi smiled a little. "Let's just say I serve where I'm needed." Dean nodded slowly. He understood enough. Ravi was no ordinary man. He was someone trusted with work that never made the news but kept others safe. Before leaving, Dean said, "I'm glad I met you. That day at the gas station, it changed me." Ravi gave a short nod. "Good. Then it wasn't a waste of time." The men and the woman around Ravi began loading small cases into the SUV. Dean noticed each of them moved with quiet discipline, the same way soldiers did. As Dean turned to leave, Ravi spoke one last time. "Officer Dean." Dean stopped and looked back. Ravi's voice carried calm strength. "Keep doing what you're doing. Protect your town. Lead with respect." "That's real courage," Dean smiled. "I will." He walked back to his car as the engines behind him started. The black vehicles formed a line and drove off down the road, disappearing into the night like shadows. Dean stood for a moment, watching them go. The sound of their engines faded slowly, leaving only the whisper of the wind. He didn't know where Ravi was heading or what his mission was, but deep down he felt proud to have met him. Back in his patrol car, Dean looked once more at the empty road and said softly, "Good luck, soldier." Then he turned his car toward town, the headlights cutting through the dark, carrying a man who had finally learned the meaning of true honor. The town was quiet the next morning. Officer Dean drove his usual patrol route, but something inside him had changed. The streets looked different. The people he passed seemed more real, more human. It was as if he was seeing them for the first time without the weight of arrogance clouding his eyes. He stopped at a small park where children were playing. He watched them for a moment, smiling as they ran after a ball, laughing freely. Dean felt a sense of responsibility, not authority. He remembered Ravi's calm voice, the way he had taught him that respect and courage went hand in hand. Dean continued driving, checking the streets carefully. His radio crackled. "Officer Dean, We received a report of a suspicious vehicle near the old bridge road. Please investigate, Dean frowned. Could it be connected to Ravi? He had seen the SUVs leave not long ago, but he had no proof. Still, his curiosity was strong. He followed the directions to the bridge. The area was quiet and isolated, surrounded by trees and fields. A single black SUV was parked near the bridge. Its windows were dark and no one appeared to be inside. Dean slowed his car and approached carefully. Then, as he stepped out of his vehicle, the sound of footsteps came from behind him. He turned quickly. Ravi was there again, standing silently by the SUV. "Evening, Officer Dean," Ravi said calmly. Dean's surprise was genuine. "You again? I thought you were gone for a while." Ravi smiled faintly. "I move where I am needed. Sometimes the road takes me back. You, however, seem to be taking your duty seriously." Dean nodded. "I've been learning. After meeting you, I realized what it really means to serve. It's not about fear or control. It's about protecting people and earning respect." Ravi's eyes softened slightly. "Good. You are learning quickly." Suddenly, 2 more black SUVs arrived silently from the side road. The engines were quiet, but the presence of the vehicles filled the area with a sense of order. Men and women in plain clothing stepped out, moving efficiently to open the back of the SUVs. They were placing cases inside, handling everything with careful attention. Dean watched, fascinated. These were not ordinary people. They moved with precision, discipline, and purpose. Each action was calculated but calm. He realized this was a team that had worked together for years, and Ravi was their leader. One of the men, a woman holding a tablet, stepped forward. "Sir, everything is in order. We can leave when you wish." Ravi nodded. "Good. Officer Dean, you should return to your town. There is nothing here for you to worry about. The matters we handle are not meant for public eyes." Dean hesitated. He wanted to ask questions, but something in Ravi's calm demeanor stopped him. Instead, he said, "I understand. I just want to thank you for what you taught me. I'll do my duty the right way from now on." Ravi's small nod was acknowledgement enough. "That is all I ask. Remember, Officer Dean, courage is not about confrontation. It is about doing what is right, even when no one is watching." Dean's mind absorbed every word. He looked at Ravi, standing tall and composed, surrounded by his team. There was no arrogance, only quiet authority, strength, and respect. As the SUVs started their engines, Ravi turned to Dean one last time. "Keep your town safe. Lead with honor, not fear. That is how you will earn respect." Dean nodded slowly. "I will." The convoy moved together, disappearing down the winding road, leaving Dean alone on the bridge. The sun was setting, casting a golden light over the fields and the river below. Dean felt a strange sense of peace. He turned back to his car, ready to drive home. For the first time, he felt that his role as a police officer had true meaning. It was not about asserting authority over others, but serving with integrity. As he drove back to the town, he replayed Ravi's words in his mind. Each sentence felt heavier with importance than any badge he had worn. He understood now that courage, discipline, and respect were far more powerful than fear. By the time Dean reached the center of town, night had settled in. The streets were calm. He parked his car and looked around, noticing the small details he had ignored before. The laughter of people on porches, the lights in homes, the quiet beauty of the town he was sworn to protect. Dean smiled faintly. He had met a man who had changed his life, a veteran who did not need to show power but commanded it simply by who he was. And from that day forward, Officer Dean promised himself that he would serve differently, fairly, with honor, and with true courage. The memory of Ravi and the 4 black SUVs would stay with him forever. The morning sun rose gently over the quiet neighborhood. Birds sang on the fences, and a soft breeze carried the smell of freshly cut grass. For the first time in a long while, Sam felt truly at peace. The fear and tension that once ruled the neighborhood were gone. Karen's name had become nothing more than a memory, a warning of what happens when power is misused. Her house stood empty, the windows dark and dusty. No one missed the sharp tone of her voice or her constant knocking on doors. Maya sat on the porch, sipping her tea as she watched children play across the street. Neighbors waved happily as they passed, their faces lighter and free of worry. The place had changed, and everyone knew it was because Maya had stood her ground. Sam joined her with a smile. "It feels different now," he said softly. Maya nodded. Yes, it feels like a real community again. People are no longer afraid to live freely. In the following weeks, the new HOA board worked hard to fix the damage Karen had caused. Unfair rules were removed, fines were reviewed, and residents were invited to share ideas instead of living under threats. Each meeting was open and friendly. People laughed again and trust began to grow. Maya attended every meeting, but not as a figure of authority. She came as a neighbor, offering advice only when needed. Her calm voice and fair words gave others the courage to speak up. Everyone respected her, but more importantly, they trusted her. One day during a community cleanup event, an older neighbor named Mrs. Green approached Maya with a small smile. "You know, dear, this place hasn't felt this peaceful in years," she said. "You didn't just protect us. You reminded us that we have a voice." Maya smiled warmly. "It wasn't just me, Mrs. Green. Everyone stood together. That's what made the difference." Sam watched from across the street, proud of how Maya had changed everything. She didn't need power to lead. Her honesty and kindness did that on their own. Later that evening, as the sun began to set, Maya walked by Karen's old house. It was for sale now, the for sale sign swaying gently in the wind. She stopped for a moment, looking at it silently. Sam joined her. "Thinking about her?" he asked. Maya nodded slightly. "I am. People like her believe control means strength. But real strength is fairness, treating others with respect." Sam smiled faintly. "You showed everyone that. Even the officers respected you when they saw who you were." Maya looked thoughtful. "Being in internal affairs means making sure even the powerful stay fair. But here it wasn't about my badge. It was about showing people they can stand up without fear." They continued walking through the neighborhood. Small lights glowed in windows, laughter echoed from yards, and the sound of music floated softly in the air. It was peaceful. The kind of peace that comes after courage has done its job. That night, the HOA board sent out an announcement to every house. It read, "Our community stands for respect, fairness, and unity. No one will be above the rules, and no one will be ruled by fear again." When Sam read it aloud, Maya smiled. "That's the best outcome we could ask for," she said quietly. Sam nodded. "You changed more than rules, Maya. You changed hearts." The next morning, the neighborhood held its first community brunch in years. Long tables were set up along the street, covered with homemade dishes. Neighbors laughed, shared food, and told stories. Even people who once hid behind closed doors came out to join. Maya helped serve food, laughing with others as children ran around. Sam played music from a small speaker, and the entire street filled with joy. At one point, Mrs. Green stood up and raised her cup. "To Maya and Sam," she said warmly, "for standing for what's right and bringing peace back to all of us." Everyone clapped, and Maya felt her cheeks grow warm. She wasn't used to being the center of attention. But in that moment, she felt proud, not for herself, but for what the neighborhood had become. As the day ended, Sam and Maya sat together under the fading light. The laughter around them slowly quieted, and the golden sky painted everything in peace. Maya leaned back and said softly, "This is how life should be. People living side by side, helping each other, not fearing each other." Sam smiled. "And all it took was one person refusing to be afraid." Maya looked at him, her eyes calm. "Not one person," she said gently. "A whole community that finally believed in doing what's right." The wind moved softly through the trees, carrying the sound of laughter into the distance. The neighborhood that once lived in fear now stood strong, united by honesty and kindness. And for the first time in years, peace truly belonged to everyone.